know you want to be a vet. So today we're going to hear from our guest, but before I start asking her questions and give her an opportunity to introduce herself, I just want to make sure that as you excuse me, that as you log in, that you say hi, let me know where you're from, and get ready to ask questions and to be not entertained, but to learn. This is all about being informative. And during this time of COVID-19, we're in the house and, we just have so many things that we want to do and we can't do. So this is a great way for people to learn about careers. I'm doing a little pivot this week. I think in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be focusing on careers because I really want students to start thinking about the possibilities that are out there for them. So I had the opportunity to actually just meet Stevi today. So So I'm learning about her as you're learning about her. So let's see. I'm just trying to wait and see if anybody's going to log in. Let me just check and see. I always try to follow it on my phone too. Okay. So folks, let's log in now. We're on. Oh, why is this doing this? This is weird. Sometimes I love technology, but sometimes it just makes me crazy. So
as you saw just now, I have my own issues with technology, and I can't remember being without it.
Oh, I know exactly. You're a digital native. This is your second language.
I'm still here. Like, why can't you hear me?
Okay, so we'll get started. Oh, why is this doing this? Okay. Just waiting to see if we get a few people to log in and join us. Okay, so I see a couple. Okay, so someone's joined in. So please let us know who you are, where you're from. We're always looking to interact with folks. So as I said earlier, this is Stevi Kincade, and she is going to share her story with us about her journey on her way to becoming a vet. And I think this is so important because, we'd like to see more women in STEM. So this is definitely an opportunity for women to find out more information about how she got to where she is today. And it's also just a great way for you to learn about a career that you may not know a lot about. Everybody wanted to be a vet. Everybody loves their animals. So this is an opportunity for you to hear how one person is working towards that. Thank you. Oh, hey, thank you, Jerry, for sharing. I really appreciate that. And say hi to everybody, and anybody as you join in, please let me know. Say hello, let me know where you're from. So Stevi, I'm going to get this started. So tell me, so first of all, tell us where you are in vet school right now. Name of your school, so just so people know.
Yeah, so like she said, I'm Stevi. I'm currently in my second semester of my first year of vet school at Tuskegee University here in Alabama.
Okay, so Stevi, tell me about what did you do in high school that led you to this particular career pathway?
Strangely enough, and my mom, and this will make sense when I get to it. My mom is a neonatologist. She has always wanted to be a neonatologist. She's a baby doctor. Apparently, she can't remember wanting to do anything else. Okay. Strangely enough, I am the same way. I cannot truly remember a point in my life where I didn't want to be a veterinarian, but most of that has been affirmed through life experiences. So I moved around a lot as a kid. My family did, around Dallas area, but they also changed schools a lot. So I became a really adaptable person with people, but I always had my pet. So it's I always had my dog, and even though everything would change, I still have my dog. And because of that, my pets became really, really important to me, as you can imagine. And I remember, unfortunately, my first dog, he got hit by a car. And we went to the ER, and there wasn't really much that they could do for him. It was a bad injury. And I guess in that moment, I was really just affirmed that I was I don't ever want to feel this hopeless again. I don't ever want to feel like I can't do anything like this ever again. So in that moment, I said, well, the only way that you can help animals is you be a vet, which is what I wanted to do the whole time. I knew I wanted to be around animals, but I guess in that moment, I said, I guess this is what we got to do. So here we are.
Okay. So tell me, what kind of classes did you take in high school? What kind of student were you in high school?
I was very lucky. I went to a big high school and we had a lot of kind of technical-ish programs. So while in high school, I actually got certified as a certified veterinary assistant.
Okay.
So I had my senior year. Well, let me start before that because that was my senior year. Freshman year, I took about small animal sciences, wildlife sciences, small animal care, that type of stuff, exotic wildlife medicine. So luckily, we did have some animal-based electives that I took growing up. Also, that when I got to my senior year, I could sign up for certification of veterinary assistant.
Mhm.
So I got an internship at a local hospital, and I went there for 3 hours, 5 days a week, for 15 hours a week, and just watched and did what they told me. I folded towels, I cleaned cages, I watched surgeries, and then I got them to sign off on my hours. I believe I needed about 300 of them.
Wow.
And then I took a certification test. I went and sat for the test, and then I got certified as a veterinary assistant.
Okay. That sounds so good. We have a couple of people. Um, Someone, Dion Williams, is saying Leela is watching. So they're saying
Oh,
hi.
I'm hello, Layla the pet vet.
So just wanted to let you know that. Um, so you said something very important that struck me is that you did an internship.
If there is anything, and I know this may be sounding like kind of crazy, a lot of people they hear internship and they're like, I want to help with surgeries, I want to help with this, I want to work with this. If you can get in where you fit in. The experience is what matters. You may not be doing the most glamorous thing in the hospital, but you have that on your resume. And if you do a good job, you have someone who can write a letter of recommendation for you. And especially while you're young, you can have a fine little kennel technician internship or job even where you mostly clean cages and this occasionally you get to watch a spay or a neuter, but that person will vouch for you. And you can go to a bigger internship and a bigger internship. That's just one of the things I've noticed is everyone's always in a rush to get to like the super fancy internship. And I'm like, you have all the time in the world for that. But while you're young and you can mess up and they're okay if you mess up
Mhm.
because you don't know nothing,
Right.
take the little internship. It's fine.
I am so glad you're giving this advice. So any young people that are out there hearing this, if you're hearing it now or you hear it on the replay, that is so, so important. I know one of my students I have this year, actually he's a senior in high school, and he's considering being a vet. That's what he thinks he wants to do. And at this point he's undecided, but he's thinking about it. And one of the
Yeah.
things I did recommend to him was I said, so what do you do with animals besides have pets? I said, you got to do more than I said, because there are so many pet owners, but not everybody's going to be qualified to be a vet. So he did he volunteers at our local animal
Hmm.
shelter where he
That's
walks with
great.
the
I
dog.
know.
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh,
Funny
no,
that you said that. It's that my very first day of undergrad as an animal science major, and I mean my first day, our professors handed us a paper and said, besides owning pets, what experience do you have with animals?
wow.
And there was a decent amount of people in the room who didn't have much to say. But if you had volunteered, if you helped in any way, if you had done even like some of those events where they take foster dogs in front of pet stores, that is experience that you can put on that paper and say, I don't just own pets. I've done a little some that you'll have
Okay,
over everyone else.
that is so important. So you did your undergrad work at UMass Amherst.
Yes, ma'am. Go Minute Man.
Okay, so what did you major in at UMass?
I initially was an animal science major, and then what happens at UMass, there's two animal science tracks. And there's like an animal management one and a biotech one that you can major in. But when you get to your junior year, if you have enough credits and your grades are good, they'll put you on the pre-veterinary track. So that's what I ended up graduating with,
Okay.
a degree in pre-veterinary science. So
Veterinary science. Okay. So now there aren't a whole lot. There are what, about 30 accredited veterinary schools in the United States.
I
And
think they just added two this year. Yeah,
oh,
they
okay.
added, yeah, Long Island made one. And I'm originally from Texas. So if you're from Texas, know that Texas Tech is making one mostly just for Texas residents. So
Oh,
they just opened up, I think, or they're about to open up this cycle. And they're technically not accredited yet, but once they graduate their first class, they will be fully accredited.
okay. All right, that is really important to know because people talk about going to vet school, and with the small number of vet schools, it's very competitive.
That's why I'm like, there's two more they added. One's in Texas. If you're texting, I recommend applying to Texas Tech because they're looking for you.
Okay, that's really good information to know. So tell me, what were some of the experiences you had at UMass Amherst in your pre-veterinary major? What were some of the things that you got to do that helped reinforce what you wanted to do in your career pathway, or that challenged you, or that helped you get into vet school?
So, funnily enough, and I just start here because I went to UMass initially because they had recruited me to run track and field.
Oh,
And I knew that this was a good place for me because the coach came at me and said, "You want to be a vet? UMass has a list of everyone they sent to vet school in the past year and where they went statistically laid out." And I'm like, "Well, if you're willing to put this information out there, you must be sending people places."
right.
So I got there, and the first thing I got into was the board goat management class. And basically, in the fall, you learn how to take care of goats and like what they're for, because they were meat goats, and like how to run a farm. And in the spring, the goats do get pregnant and they have babies, and then you learn how to sell. So I was a student in that class, and then I took the spring semester before the fall semester, and then in the fall semester they asked me to TA the class. So I ended up TAing the board goat management class, which means I had more than tons of experience to put on my resume when it came to goats. Because
All
I
right.
had also given some lectures and I had obviously helped been goat midwife and helped bring some goats into the world and giving shots and done ultrasounds and even had a C-section because you're at the barn. Yeah, you're at the barn way more than every other student. So if something happens with another animal, like the C-section I saw wasn't a goat C-section, it was a sheep C-section. But the professor was there and was like, "I know you know what you're doing. I know I can trust you. Come help me." And I'm just like, "Me?" She's like, "Yes, you." And I'm like, "Okay." So I was there for a sheep C-section, which turned out successful. Baby was good. Um, and that brings me to another point. I think the animal science professors are some of the greatest professors on those campuses.
Okay. Why do you
They
say?
pointed me, they will point you in the direction of whatever you're looking for. I went in her office, Dr. Belter specifically, love her. Went in her office. She's our ANSI 101 professor, but also the main veterinarian. And I said, "I don't know what to do next. I feel like my grades aren't amazing and I don't know what to do for experience because I'm not from here. Because I'm from Texas. I went to college in Massachusetts. I don't know what's going on everywhere." And she said, "Okay, you should apply to this wildlife internship at the Tufts Veterinary School." I was like, "There is no way I'm going to get that." She said, "But how do you know? I'll write you a letter of recommendation. You should apply." I said, "Okay, sure." And she said, "And while you're waiting for that, I'm going to send you should get this internship at this surgery clinic in the area. I have sent people there before. I'll give them a good word. Just send your resume and walk in. They'll respect you. Tell them you'll be their surgery intern." I ended up getting both of those things. I remember it because I was sitting in my car and I saw that acceptance took a wildlife internship, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" Just looking around like a psychopath, like
Wow.
there's no way this is happening. And so obviously I went to her and I told her, and she's like, "I told you, you just gotta go look." So they will open doors for you if you show that's what you want.
Okay. I love that you said that because we're always talking to young folks about creating their professional network early and making sure that when they're in school, that they're really talking to their advisors, that they're searching out their advisors, that they're listening to the advice of their advisors, because as you just said, by listening to that professor and doing what she told you to do, you ended up with two absolutely wonderful internships. So tell us a little bit.
And
Somebody asked a question. They said, "How was your experience in Granada?"
so love it. Love it. So when I was for everyone who's curious about that, when I was in high school, like I said, I've wanted to be a veterinarian basically my whole life. So because of that, I was very fortunate. My parents were able to frame a lot of my upbringing around that, especially knowing when you know a lot of things about veterinary medicine, it's very difficult to get into. There's a lot of debt involved. There's a lot of mental strain involved. So they framed a lot of my upbringing and summers around that in track just to be like, hey, is this really what you want? Because if I did something and I was like, oh, I don't like this, then I can change still. Because I was, so when I was 16 years old, I think it was like the summer before my senior year of high school, they found a vet prep program for 2 weeks at St. George's University in Grenada.
Cool. How
And we
cool.
all went, and they had family vacation, and I had school.
So tell
But school was really cool. But I say, now, don't get me wrong, school was really cool. It was an international program. So there were some American students, some Canadian students, and some Scottish students, which is really funny because like all of our Independence Days, because we were there over 4th of July. So like July 3rd is Canadian Independence Day. And then July 4th is obviously our Independence Day. So that was really funny. But school was very like, I think it's a very good program. It's not just like, oh, you're gonna give them money and you're gonna get to watch a spay and a neuter. No, you were really like in class. You showed up that first day and they handed you a binder and a schedule and they like, this your class schedule, and you like, this look long. They like, don't it? That's crazy because it's led by vet students who go there. I actually am still in contact with a couple of my mentors from there who are now in the field. One of them left Grenada and is now in Michigan, weirdly enough, but she likes it there. She's a mixed practice vet. But they were vet students and you would look at them and be like, this seems like really kind of ridiculous. And she's like, don't it? That's what I did my 3rd week. And you're like, oh, this is real. This is really stuff I have to know. And they're like, yes. So and then you end up having a final test. Obviously, it's not like life or death, but it's definitely a realistic type test where you're taking it and you're sitting there thinking and struggling because if you didn't study, you're not going to know anything.
Right. Right.
So even though there are no risk in that moment because you're 16 and not even in college, much less vet school, it gave me a really good grasp of like, oh, this is really difficult. I have to spend like a lot of time studying when other people are maybe out there playing soccer or going into town. I should probably be sitting here looking at these notes.
I love that. I love that you found out early what it takes to go into the career that you wanted to go into, the amount of rigor and the dedication and the commitment. So guys, so students that are out there listening to this, think about it. Are you committed? Are you dedicated? Are you willing?
You don't have to suffer. I'm in vet school, and that's the other thing. Even though once you get here, you're like, oh, I made it to vet school. That's it. I'm telling you, as a first-year student, that is not it. You do not stop struggling once you get here. You just struggle differently, and you're a little happier because all your stuff is relevant. So at least you're like, I see why I'm supposed to know this. It's hard, but at least I get why you're telling me I'm supposed to know this.
Okay.
But you will spend copious hours studying.
Tell me about your first semester in vet school.
Just the school or the life?
All of it, because I would think that being in vet school doesn't leave you a whole lot of time to do much of anything else.
You would think correct. I'm not going to lie. And the biggest, if I can give any piece of advice, when you first get to vet school, that first day, you're going to think, this don't seem like a lot. Go home and study. Study early if you can, because it will pile on before you know it. And especially in your first semester, it's depending on the program that you're in, it might not all seem to interconnect until the end. So like in my first semester, I seemed like I was learning like, why in this class am I learning, I get regular general anatomy, but in physiology, I'm learning respiratory physiology. And in micro, we're learning about renal. This doesn't make any sense. But by the time you get to the end, it's all connected, and it's going to be way more convenient for you if it all connects and you're on the same place for all of them, because it's not going to connect if you're behind.
Okay, I like that. I like that. So what was your most challenging class?
Anatomy.
Anatomy.
Anatomy is just a beast of a class. Anatomy just has so like to the point that on like maybe within my first week, the anatomy professors were like, you're going to be in the anatomy lab after school, on weekends, in your free time. And obviously you just got there, you thinking, I ain't gonna be doing none of that. I got this. I can get it all done in lab. I don't gotta be nowhere on the weekends. I'm gonna be home chilling on the weekends. You will not be home chilling on the weekends. You will be in anatomy lab because you are not done with your dissection. And you thought you could be done with your dissection, but the problem is, since you just got there, you don't know nothing about dissection. So you're
Okay.
not going to be done that first day. So anatomy is just such a severe workload. And that's still another thing I have to advise. Yes, you're going to give a lot of your time to like probably anatomy. From what I can tell, I've talked to my other friends who ended up at other vet schools, and anatomy just seems to be the kicker. But the other thing that we know is you can't drop the ball on your other classes. There's no point in getting an A in anatomy if you're going to get a D in physiology.
Okay. Okay. What surprised you the most about vet school so far?
Mm. So Tuskegee is a really small vet school. It's like the smallest vet school out of all of them. So everyone knows everyone. Now, I thought I'm fairly young. I'm 22 years old. And especially for vet school, there are people who are 30, there are people who have kids. So I'm especially kind of young. I guess I kind of thought when you were in vet school, if you didn't find your little clique, you were just going to have to figure it out on your own. Them professors, and maybe this is just the HBCU vibe, they will look for you. You can't just be not doing things. They're going to be, Miss Kincade, yes? You ain't read that, did you? No. And you're like, interesting. I'll see you in the office, and they'll have you read it in their office and sit there and just read it in front of them because they look out for you. I guess that's just different. There were certain classes in my undergrad where they had very large classes. They didn't look out for everybody. But at Tuskegee, they are taking note of you. And then you'll have a grand big. They looking for you too. Your tutors are looking out for you. And take advantage of that. You will need that support system, especially if like I'm not from Alabama. This technically isn't home for me. But having that support system really, really helps.
Okay. That's really important. I love what you said about the professors really taking a strong interest in everyone because it is a small program. So I think people should consider it for that reason because you are getting that kind of almost like a one-on-one attention.
If you put in the effort, they just notice if something. So like, sad story, I had a ferret previously. She unfortunately passed away unexpectedly in my first semester. She was my emotional support animal. Obviously, I was very, very upset. Every single one of my professors noticed. Every single one of them. One of them pulled me to the side and was like, "Oh, I understand what you're going through," to the point that he was like, "I think I'm going to move the exam you had today." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Yeah, we're going to move it to next week. I don't think this is a good mental state for you to be in." And that meant a lot to me, obviously, because like in maybe the regular world, people are like, "So your little hamster thing died," but they were like, "Oh, I don't know. This is a veterinary student. This gonna hurt her. You ain't gonna do well on this exam." And I did significantly better than I would have when I actually ended up taking it.
That's great that they noticed that. That is so great. So Dion,
every single one.
So Dion asked a question. Why do you think students are afraid to ask for help if they're struggling?
I think part of it, at least from what I can tell from my previous experiences, I've had two reasons why I've been unwilling to ask for help. The first one is if the professor has seemed to give me a vibe, and this isn't even like, because this can be very easily misconstrued because I've done this. If you get the vibe from a professor that everything should be super easy and that you don't know what's going on, then you get kind of nervous to ask, but still go ask. Because I've had it, I know my junior year nutrition class in undergrad, I went to his office and I kid you not, I took all my notes, I went in his office, I sat down, I put the notes on his desk, I said, "I don't know what's going on and I need you to tell me." And he said, "You don't know what's going on?" I said, "No." And he said, "And you took all these notes yourself?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "And you want me to tell you?" I said, "Please." And he said, "Okay." And he just started, "You don't need to know none of this. You need to know this. I'm gonna ask you about this," crossing out and circling things and everything. And I took it back from him and I said, "So if I look at this, I'm gonna do better." He said, Sure enough, the next exam I got an A.
See that? That
like,
is cool. That's great. That is
like,
great.
and he emailed me because it was like over spring break. He said, "You got a 92. Congrats." I was like,
That's great.
"Y'all need to go in this man's office and just tell him you want the answers. He will tell you the answers." And the other reason that I've had is if it seems like everyone else around you is doing okay. You don't want to feel like you're the only one not getting it. It's like if you're running a race and you're in last, or from what you think you're in last. Like when you start at 200 and it's staggered, you're not really in last. Some people are just starting off stronger than you. Some people are showing it better than you. But I promise, especially once you get to college and vet school, you are not going to be the only person struggling in a class.
Okay.
Like they're just doing it differently than you. Go get your help, because that person that you think is doing so well without any help, they got help. You just ain't see them do it, but they're getting help. They're taking classes before they get there. They're going to the professor before classes start. Like, they are doing something. So go get the same help. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing, because it's your journey in the end of life, and you're going to make it to however you make it on you, like however you do it. I don't know how these other people got to vet school, but this is how I got to vet school. This may not be how you get to vet school, but if you get there.
Okay. So tell me, so when you were at UMass Amherst and you knew you were getting ready to apply for vet schools, what was that process like, and how many vet schools did you apply to?
I applied to 6.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Like, I applied to 6. I got into 2.
Okay.
Excuse me. It was very stressful. To be perfectly honest, I can't continue this without giving shout outs to my parents, because it's a very discouraging process. I wasn't even going to apply to vet school. I applied to vet school that in this year. I was going to apply, but in a later year. I didn't feel like my grades were strong enough. I said there is no way I'm getting into vet school this time around. And my parents basically were like, we ain't asked you all that. We told you to apply. So then I got in and they were like, interesting. And I'm just like, okay, maybe y'all know a little something. But it's a very stressful process, because especially if you've made it to this point in your undergrad, obviously you have colleagues and classmates who are also applying to vet school. And if you're all applying to a vet school in the same area, you're going to probably hear some people that got in. You're going to hear some people that didn't get in. You're going to hear about some people who only applied to one school and they didn't get into their one school and they didn't have a backup plan. You're going to hear about some people that you thought definitely are going to get into vet school and they didn't. And that's going to have you shook, because you're like, oh, they didn't get in. How am I going to get in? Like, and then also, if I could give any recommendation about applying, it's start your application early. It's fairly rigorous, and each school typically has their own essay or a supplemental application they also want you to fill in. Like, it's a process.
Okay. So you hear that, guys out there? Start early. How much assistance did your advisor at UMass Amherst give you in moving through that school application process?
So here's another thing. UMass had personal advisors, but also there was a general advisor. My personal advisor, in my personal opinion, was not very helpful with the vet school process, but he seemed to handle more of my student athleteness. So I technically had 3 advisors, because I had one who was like my track advisor, who made sure I was always eligible, my general advisor, and a pre-vet advisor. So I did seek out other advisors and mentors, and they were very helpful to me in the sense of like, keep ideas for essays to keep me being unique. A vet school is gonna get tired if they read the same old. And I know this is what I literally said when this started, but my dog died and I found this bird and now I'm doing this, because they're gonna say that doesn't sound interesting, that doesn't sound unique. So they help you, because they've probably seen you grow as you've been in that university, and they probably have been like, okay, well, why don't you write about when you did this? And I'm like, oh yeah, I did do that. And they were like, yeah, that's kind of cool. You should write about that. I'm like, oh, okay. And they've read over my essays and made sure they sounded good, and obviously wrote my letters of recommendation. If I can tell you one thing, pick like 2, maybe 3 professors when you get there that's going to be that you like you, and you're doing well in their course, who you can build a bond with. I kid you not. This is one of the things my advisors told me, is you can't go in their office knowing you failed their class asking for a letter of recommendation. What are they going to say? Like, that looks insane. But pick like 2 or 3 that you can build a bond with, that when this is ready, they know what you've done and they know what kind of person you are, and they are willing to write you a letter of recommendation to vet school, because a lot of vet schools put a lot of weight in your letters.
Okay. So is there a separate, like if people are going into medical school, they have to take the MCAT. Is there a comparable test for vet school?
So kind of. We used to have like the VCAT, but they got rid of that, and now it's just the GRE. But the reason I say kind of is there are several schools, like a fair handful of schools, that no longer require the GRE.
Oh, okay.
Like, they just don't see it as a realistic measure of whether or not you are going to get through vet school. So a lot of schools, especially like currently this next application cycle with everything going on where they're talking about moving the GRE online, they just said, don't send us a GRE score. There's no point. I think half the schools I applied to did not care about my GRE score. I just didn't send it to them.
Okay. Okay. So what courses are you doing this semester that's been interrupted?
So I'm in like part two of a lot of my classes. So veterinary anatomy, veterinary physiology, veterinary microanatomy, parasitology, and clinical skills. And then they also added um, epidemiology and public health and immunology.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot.
You will have a very full schedule, and it doesn't lighten up next year, from what I hear.
Okay. So with this whole COVID-19 and not being able to take classes, what's it like? What do you do? Are you doing all your classes online now?
Unfortunately, there's no way to like sugarcoat it. It's definitely not the best method. Like my anatomy class is completely different. I don't enjoy it, but there's nothing else we can do. You know what I mean?
Right, right. And so much of it is with anatomy. Isn't there a lab component?
Yep, and that's the problem is we don't have specimens or anything to look at. So say you're doing they might have a recording of a
Okay.
dissection they did, but for people like I'm a very kinetic learner,
Uh,
so it's very difficult for me to learn this way because half the way I remember things is I touched it, I did them, I had a movement. So watching them do it is just not the same.
okay. Yeah, that is a struggle. Let me just see if anyone else has asked any questions here. I don't see any other questions. Folks, you're out there and you have a question that you want to ask Stevie about vet school and about her experience, please, post it up there and also make sure let me know who's out there. So Dion, thank you, Dion. You're doing wonderful. I love this. Asked, what are your thoughts on schools with guaranteed admissions into vet schools based on your undergrad GPA? Is that an easier route?
I'm going to be perfectly honest, I don't know much about that because I don't know many programs like that.
Okay.
The
So
only program that I know something similar to that, Tufts has an early admission program, and it's not guaranteed, but if you're doing very well, you have a very high chance of getting early acceptance. And if
okay.
you get early acceptance and you just keep it above a 3.0 for the rest of college, like I have a friend that got in that way, then you have nothing to worry about. But because I think vet school is so competitive, I don't know a lot of programs that have guaranteed admissions.
Guaranteed admissions. And I would think that it would be well, it probably would be an easier route because at least you would have less stress about worrying about that final application process, knowing that as long as you kept your GPA up to a certain point, you were okay. And
Yes.
then you could move on. It's just like some schools that have kind of guaranteed admissions to their med school, the med schools. As long as you have a certain GPA and do certain things, they may even waive taking the MCAT.
Yeah.
So I could see where that would take less stress off of a student. I could see um, where that would allow you to put all of your time and energy into the coursework that you're doing and not worry so much about that whole application process and what
Yeah.
have you. But again, like you said, with the small number of vet schools we have compared to medical schools, it's going to be competitive. It's going to
Yeah.
be
That's
very
where the only other thing is because, like I said, I don't know a program like this, but if there is a program like that, then it's possible that their requirement is just super duper high. So
mhm,
it could be like, oh, hey, you finish your first year of college, you have a 3.7, great GPA, and then your classes start getting harder, and now you're getting stressed out because now you have to hold on to that for the next 3 years. And you look at a lot of statistics for vet schools. Tuskegee is one of the better ones in terms of acceptance. It's like 3 people per 1 seat, but you look at some of the schools that take in even larger classes, it's like 7 people to 1 seat, 7 people want 1 seat, 10 people want 1 seat. I know the other school I got into, St. George's, I got in, but their retention rate is ever so slightly lower just because not only do you, because they have their class is bigger, they have about 200 people in their class, maybe 230 at times. Not only is their class bigger, but now most of the class isn't, initially from Grenada. So you have to adjust to the cultural changes, and you have to adjust to being in this big class size. So a lot of people will either drop or transfer or something. So like, it's an interesting concept. I just feel like it would be a very hard standard to maintain.
Okay. So how many are in your class?
59 at the moment.
Okay.
But yeah, I will admit, last semester, I believe we had 66,
Okay.
and we lost 9 people, but gained 2 or 3 people.
Okay. So I can see now why you get that close attention from professors with that
We
small.
are a very small class comparatively to basically every other vet school.
Yeah. And I would think that would be a good thing because it's the amount of attention that you're getting and the kind of one-on-one, almost kind of one-on-one education is is only going to help you in the field. It's only going to
Yeah,
help
yeah,
you.
yeah.
So what
Um,
kind of so even though you're just in your first year, what kind of internships have they discussed, or what are the possibilities for internships in this program?
so I actually did get a summer research program here at Tuskegee. They do a
Okay.
summer research program and a summer clinical program, I believe, every year. And because I'm actually studying stuff like virology current and immunology this summer. So with everything going on, I'll probably be kind of busy. But uh, they have a lot of other topics on that. I know one of the options was client care and um, dealing with death in a way. So like we've had a whole talk on whenever someone loses a pet and when that person is incredibly sad, which strangely enough, that happened maybe a week after my ferret had passed away. So I was like, "Ooh, this seemed important, but this kind of hurt a little bit, but it's okay." And they have a clinical program where you can intern at the clinic as a first year, which is really, really cool. And one of the best things that they have that I never really thought of as a vet student, but it's really awesome. They have a lot of clubs. Join some clubs your first year because the clubs will hold events, suture labs, wound pair replacement, on horses and goats and cows and dogs. I'm actually secretary of the shelter medicine club, so we do a lot of volunteering with the shelter in Tuskegee and
Okay.
with nail trims and playing with them. We made toys and brought them last time for all the rescue dogs. So join a club. You can get a lot of experience with just joining a club. You can do all types of like rectal palpation in the bovine club and in the equine club. Like
You can
you,
do what did you say, rectal?
you rectal palpation, so you can feel like ovaries and do breeding soundness exams. Listen, my mom makes the same face when I say stuff like that. She's like, "You did what?"
So all you folks out there who think that being a vet is a glamorous job.
It is not. Oh, I'm sorry if you were under the impression that we'd be out here like, because I know a lot of people have been like, you go to Tuskegee. Those 3 guys on Animal Planet went to Tuskegee. I'm like, yes, but no, it's not like that. We not glamorous. We ain't got no hair and makeup team. You probably smell like kind of bad, like anatomy lab or like cow. You get home and your roommates are like, can you change? And you like, I guess, but I'm so tired. Like,
So what is the most interesting lab that you've done since you've been there?
so one of I before this all happened, we were doing equine dissections, and I know, but in one of the horses, because unfortunately, like the horse was sick, so they got put down. Um, we were doing a dissection, and we were like, and the professor comes over, and he's like, pregnant, and we're like, what? And he's like, pregnant, and we're like, pregnant? Like, what? We were not given this information before we started doing this, but we went in and we pulled out a little horse baby. It was crazy. It was formed not fully, but like it looked like a horse baby, and I was just sitting here like
Oh my goodness.
I was like, what? This is crazy. This is insane. Like it was really cool, but it was just like because then we obviously were like, well, what the horse get put down? And it's like, oh, she was sick. She had this and got it. We're like, okay, well that makes me feel a little better, but as an anatomist, it was a very cool moment. I won't lie.
Okay. Wow, that does sound amazing. So in the vet program, so you said that you like to, you do really well with hands-on learning and what have you. How much writing is there involved in the work that you do in the classes?
Like papers,
Hmm.
not a lot. The most writing you'll have to do is normally with presentations.
Okay.
Excuse me. So we have gram rounds, and gram rounds last semester was sitting watching the fourth years present their presentation, their final kind of a clinical case, if you will, and how they went through that. And this semester, which I was the last group to present before this all went down and people just had to write papers about it, but about we were assigned a clinical case to write a presentation about. So most of your writing is involving presenting rather than actual papers. The only actual paper I wrote was last semester. Parasitology required a paper for a final, which is fairly long, but and Clin Skills sometimes ask for papers based on articles we read.
Okay.
Mhm.
So do you belong to any, so you talked about joining student clubs and what have you. Do they have you joined any student associations that are also professional associations once you become a vet? Like, is there a student chapter of associations?
So we're all technically part of SAVMA, which is like Student American Veterinary Medical Association. We're all in the junior chapter because you pay your SAVMA dues to be a part of clubs mostly. So you get some benefits through that. So like you get invited to conferences and other events happening. Like I know before it got canceled, unfortunately, there was one in New York, which at Cornell, and they were having a bunch of events like beekeeping labs, which is just kind of like that sounds kind of cool, you know? And you can do stuff like that. And they'll come do lunch and learns and they'll bring people there to talk to you about benefits of being in SAFMA as a like official veterinarian. I know we got some life insurance because you know they said free life insurance and we were like free. What's the catch? They're like no catch, free life insurance. I was like okay. So it's not a lot of life insurance, but it was a few. It was like $10,000, $20,000. And I was like, no, what? That's free. Ten, twenty
Right.
thousand dollars. Sure, sign up for that life insurance, and I have it in my drawer. That's like, all right, it's been approved. That's your life insurance. It's like, oh, okay. You get access to this online anatomy lab website, and also it's an online veterinary clinical article site. So when you're doing your presentations, you have access to a lot of like accredited, verified information that you know is going to be correct. And then there's also the Veterinary Business Medical Association, which I didn't join this year, but I think I might join next year, which gives you more talks on like when you want to build a clinic or when you want to decide net worth or when you want to talk about malpractice insurance and stuff like that. And that will connect you to the program when you leave that school, which will also give you some legal advisement and financial advisement for whenever you're deciding to make big decisions like that.
Okay. So we have another question here. Is there an opportunity to specialize in veterinary medicine? And if so, do you plan to specialize?
Yes. So in veterinary medicine in general, and I learned this later on because you see most veterinarians do like dogs and cats, which
Mhm.
that is like a high majority, but there are a lot of specializations within that alone. So like oncology and there are cancer doctors. I know there are several of my classmates who want to go into neurology and be neurosurgeons for dogs, which sounds like insane, but you learn some of these cases in school and you're like, I guess someone would have to be really good with the brain to do that. I personally want to work with exotic pets like ferrets and birds and turtles and mini pigs and that type of stuff.
Okay.
So I want to work with that. And I only learn a little bit about ferrets and that type of stuff in class, but I know once I graduate, then you can get a residency
Okay.
or an externship.
Yeah, I remember. So we have four fur family members. So we have two Rottweilers and two cats. And I remember, and actually one of our Rottweilers we had years ago, we had to take him up to Tufts Animal Hospital to have his heart checked. So that was like crazy. And then
Hmm.
here in North Carolina, we had to take one of our bodies to the North Carolina Animal Hospital to have his hips checked.
Yeah.
So, and I have to tell you, the first time I went into an animal hospital, I was like, oh my God, this is like a real hospital.
Like, this is legitimate. Oh my goodness. That's why you get even like emergency surgeons. So you'll have people who strictly deal with, my dog got hit by a car. All right, bring him in. We're gonna fix everything. We're gonna do doop 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 all this. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, this is serious. I'm like, y'all really mean business over here. But I know, like I said, one of my internships, I had two, because when you do your internships, you want to get some variety. They really do appreciate that in your application. So obviously, I had plenty of small animal experience with dogs and cats, but I also had a zoo internship where I worked as a intern zookeeper with the Outback department. So I did like goats and pigs and sheep, but I also did the kangaroos, the naked mole rats, and the tanuki, which are like raccoon dogs, and very little with the bush dog. I mostly just made his food, but I did some training and stuff with the kangaroos and did presentations on them. And yeah, you find out that kangaroos, and they were just funny creatures. They like to, because I got food for them, like bananas and stuff, and they just come and grab me, like, excuse me, and I'm just like, stop, I'm talking to people. Go over there. Like, and they just look at you like, I just want the banana. But and then my other internship, like I said, was at a wildlife clinic. So you get what, that's just fun because you get to work with like eagles. I know around 4th of July, a man came in with a mini fridge box and said, there's an eagle in this box. And you've had people come in like, I got a baby eagle. And it's not a baby eagle, it's like a pigeon or a starling or something. And he's like, yeah, I got an eagle in this box. You're like, okay, how'd you get it? Because eagles are huge. And he's like, it's injured. It was standing under my car. I have an eagle in this box. You're like, okay. So I opened the box up. Sure enough, this man had an eagle in the box. I was like, slide that lid right back on. I was like, Dr. Flo, there's an eagle in our lobby. So you can be one of those people that was like, I worked with an eagle. I worked with owls. I have pictures with owls sitting on my head because a couple of them who couldn't be released, like depending on the level of injury. So like there was a clinic owl. Her name was Ellie. Ellie only has one eye, and because owls are sight hunters, you can't release a one-eyed owl. They won't thrive. So Ellie just lived there. And she would just sit on my head and watch me feed bunnies and ducklings and possums and that type of stuff. So like, who else can say that? That's a really cool thing to be like, oh, I've worked with. And then we had a bobcat come in one day and a bear cub.
Oh my goodness.
So like a woman just
all in your internships.
This was all in the 3 months I worked at Tufts Wildlife Clinic. A woman came in holding a bear cub, talking about something. He was on the road. He didn't look okay. They told me to leave him there. I couldn't leave him there. And I'm just like, you are holding a bear, ma'am. And you're just looking around because like, at the time I was like 19 years old, and you're just looking around like, this woman is holding a bear.
Wow.
Thank you. And luckily, and then one time we had a dog come in, and it was small, so we couldn't tell if it was a dog or a coyote. So we kept it in like a little room to itself because we didn't know. And one of our veterinary interns, he was like, I want it if it's a dog. It was in fact not a dog. It was in fact a coyote. He went to rehab, and then he got released.
Oh, okay.
It was just a baby coyote.
I love the range of experiences that you had during your internships. So if there's anything that any students get out of this, watching this interview with Stevi, please search out those internships once you get to college and do whatever you can do while you're in high school also. But I mean, that just sounds like so interesting, just so absolutely amazing.
Definitely. It's also one of those things that you might not like what you're doing now. So like, I know I've heard of plenty of people who have been like really discouraged, and they're like, I don't think I want to be a vet. And really it's like, no, you want to be a vet. You don't want to work with this. You want to work with that over there. So go find a way to work with that over there. And that really has changed their whole perspective. They're like, well, I don't want to work with dogs. I want to be an aquatic veterinarian. I want to work with fish and dolphins and that type of stuff. And I'm like, I have no clue why you want to do any of that. But you know what? We need people who do that. So go do that.
Okay. So what made you decide ferrets and other exotic animals?
I got a ferret. But other than that, no, yeah, that was kind of it. I have a ferret, and I had one before him. And the little creature, so my first ferret, I would take it. It was kind of hard to find a veterinarian. And this was both a passion idea, but also a business idea. Where I live in Texas, you can't throw a rock without finding a vet clinic. And they're all doing fine. Nothing to say that that's a problem or that they're not necessary. There are a lot of dogs in my area that does dogs and cats. Oh, that need veterinarians. That being said, maybe 2 of those 10 do exotic pets. So to me, that specified a need. Even when I lived in Massachusetts, I had to drive out 40, 50 minutes just to take my ferret to the vet to get a shot or a checkup. Not even like something is wrong, just something regular. So to me, that meant there is a need. And as exotic pets grow in popularity, people with bunnies, people with birds, people with hedgehogs and chinchillas, because even like my coach had a chinchilla, my classmates have a dog, or have some birds. One of my roommates had multiple birds. My other classmate has 2 bunnies. There is a need there. So I already wanted to keep my life kind of interesting just because I didn't want to get burnout and boredom by maybe only doing dogs and cats, because I just personally think that would be me. I know plenty of people who can do that for their whole life and it's perfectly fine and that's great. But me, I feel like I would get bored doing vaccine, spay, checkup, vaccine, spay, checkup. And I knew that I already knew a lot about ferrets because it was so hard to get a vet that I've read a lot of books, a lot of articles on how to take care of the ferret myself, because it's hard to find someone to take care of them on short notice. So it'd be like, well, if I at least can get the vitals and know that this one is going to be okay, I can find a vet. I can take him to the vet the next day. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So after learning about all that and how they're all so different and how I find it so interesting, I thought, well, there's a need and I want to do it and I could make more money because I'm going to be in debt. Why not become an exotic veterinarian?
Okay, so we have another question here. Suggestions for those who may not get into vet school the first time around.
First thing I want to say is don't be discouraged. I have a lot of friends who maybe didn't get in their first time around, but got in their second or even their third. I know one person who applied about 5 times and they got in on the 5th time. If this is really what you want to do, you will find your way there. Do not get discouraged by that. If you don't get in your first time, I would see if you can get some type of report back from the schools that you really wanted to go to and even the schools that you thought that you had a better chance at on why you didn't get accepted. Because that will make a lot of the decisions. For example, if you get the report back and they tell you, oh, your GPA is phenomenal, but you lost competition with people who have more experience with you, you then know you should go get more experience. Or say the reverse, like you're a really great person and we like your experience, but you should up your grades. You might need to go to a community college, get some new grades, even get a master's program to show that you can take those harder classes and succeed. And you can come back with a master's like, hey, I took what you said to heart, but I'm ready now. And they'll look at you with more respect for that. I know this past class that I applied into was just a really crowded, tough class. Like I know one of the schools I applied to, they were like, it's really not you, but we had a 200% increase in applications. Wow. And I'm not making that number up. I mean, 200% is what they told me in the email. So one of my friends didn't get into vet school and she had interned at that school every summer and had a good GPA. And they basically had to tell her, it's not you, you're fantastic. But there were so many other people, like you coming here with your 3.8, and that's great. But these people got 3.9s. Also, you should just know where you're applying. Like I know a lot of people, the way I applied to 2 schools where I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna get in here, but let's see. I applied to 2 schools where I was like, I'm more likely to get into here. And I applied to 2 schools that I was like, if I'm gonna get in anywhere, I'm gonna get into these 2. And one of those things to consider is if your 2 schools I'm gonna get into here most likely, but they're also schools in the area, you're competing with a lot of your classmates. So some vet schools do have kind of like a restriction almost. They have like quotas where it's like, hey, we've already accepted, so our class is 80 people, and we've taken 10 already from UMass. We don't need no more UMass students. So you might have missed out on that. It's mostly, I say, just find out why you didn't get in. That will dictate it.
That's great information. That is really great information. And I think that question was from your mom. So thank you.
Hi, Mom.
So thank you for that, because that is important, because with the competitiveness of vet school, I'm sure there are a lot of rejections.
And
And
there are a lot of very competitive people, but there's just so many people out there.
yes,
Find
and
something
with
that makes you
only,
stand apart also. If you can find something that makes you a little different, that helps a lot
oh,
because you might be a 3.8 and she's a 3.8. You might be having all this 400 hours of experience and she also has 400 hours of experience. But if you did something that you're really passionate about and you get an interview or you get an essay, talk about what you're passionate about because they can tell like this person feels strongly about this other thing. And it just makes them that little bit different that I think we're going to go with them.
all right, that's great advice because we talk to our students about that who are applying, to 4-year schools and they're getting ready to write their essays. And it's like, what is it about you that no part of your application talks about that part of you? Tell us something, help us learn something about you that we wouldn't know otherwise. And, really just, and not everybody's out doing, trying to cure cancer or trying to find
Yeah,
COVID-19. But I think sometimes students underestimate their uniqueness or underestimate
definitely.
some of the experiences that they've had and how those are something that they could share with admission offices, whether it's undergrad or grad school, in order to, as you said, show that unique side of themselves.
Definitely, I can see that. I've been in a similar position where you hear someone doing, like, I know I went to a girl, she's like, oh, I'm national science fair champion, I'm valedictorian, I'm going to Carnegie Mellon. I'm not trying to say nothing about her. This was a very sweet girl and she worked very, very hard. But sometimes this is why I say you can't always compare yourself to people. If my mom is watching this, I know she's sitting here like, interesting. Wonder who told her all this. Because you'll hear what everyone else is doing, and you'll just be like, "Well, what am I bringing to the table? I shouldn't even do this." But I promise you, there's a reason that there's something about you that ain't no one else brought up. I knew one guy. He was a professional BMX racer,
Okay.
signed and everything, and he said that has nothing to do with veterinary medicine. I said it doesn't matter. No one else is going to be a professional BMX racer. I can tell you this. Like, you make money from this, right?
Hmm.
He's like, yeah, I'm signed. I'm like, write a paper about that because it at least shows you're passionate about something, you're hard working about something. I tell everyone, half my essays have been about track. Track has nothing to do with animals, but I tell people, but track even for vet school, being a D1 athlete, they can say I have time management skills, I'm hardworking, I'm disciplined, and I'm willing to compete.
Okay. And on that note, someone asked, do you miss track and field and competing? And are you still working out?
Is that my
That
mom?
that was your Auntie May.
I'm like, that's
Uh-oh.
family. I know that's family. Okay, so here's the thing.
Uh-oh, they're calling you out.
I have found other ways to compete. I will be perfectly honest, I don't miss running track and field. Just because between running track and having such a competitive major, there were a lot of my other teammates who maybe didn't have the same balancing struggle as I did. So, like, it would seem like I wasn't giving it my all when I was, but it's like, hey, I can either stay in this weight room and lift what you tell me, or I can leave right now and make sure this baby goat is successfully born. Like, these are my two choices. So it just was a very hard thing to do. That being said, I do miss competing, and I found I'm still working out, but I actually do kickboxing now. I actually do kickboxing now.
All right.
That works for me. Yeah,
Yeah.
I get energy out. And that's another thing. If you are going into undergrad or you are going into vet school or you want to, find an outlet.
Mm.
If that's video games, if that's art, if that's Legos, I know a guy who builds models. If it's painting, if it's kickboxing, I found kickboxing that works great for me. I stay in shape. It helps me be real tired. I can get my brain is clear so I can study. I sleep well. Great. But find some type of outlet because if you only do school, you will feel like you are going to go insane.
Okay, that's great advice. That is great advice. I love that advice. So, folks, even those of us that are here, we're all in shelter in place or what have you. You got to get outside. You got to do.
You can get that home workout. If you could go out in front of the house, get a little sun, anything.
My Zumba instructor is actually doing online classes, so
My
we get
kickboxing instructor is too.
we do Zoom with her, but we do our classes.
My kickboxing gym, they started doing an online workout send out, so that's what I've been doing.
So tell me, is there what one last piece of advice would you want to give to students who are considering this particular career pathway?
This may seem like a really weird piece of advice, but if this isn't what you want to do, and say this is what you thought you wanted to do your whole life, but you aren't happy or you're finding something else that makes you happy, it's okay to find something else. And I only say this because I've had a lot of friends, like one of my best friends from my track team days, who we still talk to this day. We talked the other day playing video games.
Mm-hmm.
She ended up switching from animal pre-veterinary science to medical because she decided, I don't think I really like this. And it took her to her senior year to admit that to herself. And now she's going to go to med school, and she seems much happier because we asked her, we were like, Brenda, you can run through all this. You're really going to drop it. And she said, I'm not happy. When I'm in the lab, I don't think about helping dogs. I think about helping people. I said, all right. And now she's got to go to med school. So if you just are continuing this path because you don't feel like you can leave, you can. And if this is really what you want to do, you'll stay. Because I'm stubborn. Ask my parents. They've been like, what's your backup plan? I said, veterinarian. They said, that's not a backup plan. I'm like, that is the only plan.
That's your own. Right.
Like, I don't have any backup plans. I'm going to be a veterinarian. That's the end of the discussion. And here we are. But if you realize that you can be happy doing something else, and that's not necessarily what you think you're supposed to do, don't be afraid to try something else.
I love that, Stevie. Thank you so much for that. Because you know how many students, juniors and seniors in high school, they think they have to have their whole life planned out. And if they don't have a major, then, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to major in. I said, there are adults that are still trying to figure out what they want to be when they grow up. So Don't worry about it. That's part of what college is going to do. And I love that you said that in doing your education, you'll find out if you like something or if you don't like something. And finding out you don't like something is just as valuable as finding out.
It truly is. Like, don't make it all the way to the end of your 4 years and realize you have a degree in something that you hate. Go try, get a degree. I know people who switch from, and this is like not an exaggeration. I know someone who was an animal science major my first year. She was my freshman year roommate. And she's currently, I believe, at Columbia getting her master's in anthropology.
Oh, see?
But she's happy. I know a girl who switched to psych. I know a girl who switched to wildlife conservation. So you didn't want to be a vet, but you wanted to work with animals. That's fine too. Like I just said, I know a girl who's going into med. I know a girl who's switching to kinesiology. If you get there and this isn't what you want to do, try something else. Because you're probably, 18, 19? Change. It is fine. People change all the time. I know a girl who switched from kinesiology to hotel management.
Oh, okay. But like you said, she's happy. That suits her interest.
She is happy. She is very happy. And that's really all. It'll change your life. You will really feel a lot better if you're happy with what you're doing. You may have the hardest major and the best grades, but you'll be unhappy, and that would kill it.
So important for people to remember. You're at work, 6, 8, 10 hours a day. Why would you want to be somewhere and be?
You're going to go into massive debt in veterinary medicine. You're going to be getting compassion fatigue. You're going to be at work all hours of the day. Do not do this if this isn't really what you want to do. And that's okay to admit.
That is so true. Stevie, I thank you so much because this was fabulous. I learned a whole lot, and I have a feeling, when I have a student that's interested in vet school, I'll be saying, okay, I have somebody I need you to talk to. I said, because she can kind of help get you through some of this. So I definitely will be staying in touch.
Get them to me. I'm more than happy to help.
I thank you so much, and I thank you for the people that joined in. And folks, whoever watches this later or another time, please share this out because I think this is so important for young folks to understand what this pathway to a career as a veterinary doctor is like. And as a fur mom, fur babies, with all my fur babies, I love everything about vets. I love my vet. He takes my calls all the time because we have a diabetic cat, so we've got that going on too. So again, this has been wonderful, Stevie. I am just so thankful that Antoinette introduced us, and I Looking forward to when you are Dr. Kincade.
Hey, thank you. 3 more years. Wish me
Yeah.
luck, everyone.
Yes, Dr. Kincade, I love that. Antoinette said, great job, Stevie. Sandra said, very
Thank you.
informative. Really enjoyed you, Stevie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Your aunt said, such wisdom.
She still came for me talking about this track.
Wonderful. That is so cool. I am, again, like I said, I am just super thrilled that we had this opportunity to bring this information to people, because it's so nice to find out about a career where you're just not reading about it in a book or watching a video, but to see a real live person and somebody like you who is so enthusiastic and passionate about what you're doing. This is great. This is great.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that I could be helpful to people. I really am.
Thank you. So everyone, thank you again so much for joining in. Stevie has been on giving us some fantastic information for the past hour. She is fantabulous, and I am just so thrilled, so thrilled. So, folks, we're gonna stop here, and every Monday you can join in College Conversations. As I said, I'm trying to do a little pivot during this COVID pandemic, where we're going to be talking to people of different careers, because I really want people to start thinking about what is it they might like to do, and what does that look like in real life, when you're in the midst of it, not when you're on the other end of it. So again, thank you so much. And Stevie, when I sign off here, I want you to stay on just so we can talk a couple more minutes.
Of course.
And someone said, great job, number one daughter. Can't wait to share.
Oh, of course. I'll call you. I will call them after this.
Okay. So thank you so much. And let me stop this here. Thank you, folks.